In this video, I'll discuss what good governance is and what it is not. So, watch this video up to the end, and it will clarify your concept regarding governance and good governance. Starting with the introduction, the concept of governance is not new. It is as old as human civilization. Simply put, the meaning of governance is the process of decision making and the process by which decisions are implemented or not. Uh, Governance can be explained and a number of contexts, and these contexts include corporate governance, international governance, national governance, and local governance. So far as good governance is concerned, it leads to good management, good performance, good stewardship of public money, good public engagement, and ultimately good outcomes for citizens and service users. Government is one of the actors in governance. Other actors involved in governance vary depending upon the level of government that is under discussion. In rural areas, for example, other actors may include influential landlords, associations of peasant farmers, cooperatives, non-governmental organizations, research institutes, elders, religious leaders, finance institutions, political parties, and military, etc. At the national level, in addition to the above actors, media, lobbyists, international donors, multinational corporations, and etc. may play a role in decision making or in influencing the decision making process. There are 8 major characteristics of governance which include the following. Participatory, it's consensus oriented, it has accountability, there must be transparency, responsiveness, effectiveness and efficiency, equitable and inclusiveness, and it follows the rule of law. We will explain these points one by one. So far as participation is concerned, participation by both men and women is a key cornerstone of good governance. It could be either direct or through legitimate intermediate institutions or representatives. Participation is important to point out that representative democracy does not necessarily mean that the concerns of the most vulnerable in society would be taken into consideration in decision making. Participation needs to be informed and organized. This means freedom of association and expression on the one hand and an organized civil society on the other hand. Number two, rule of law. Governance requires fair legal frameworks that are enforced impartially. It also requires full protection of human rights, particularly those of minorities and women. Impartial enforcement of laws requires an independent judiciary and an impartial and incorruptible police force. Number three, transparency, which means that decisions taken and their enforcement are done in a manner that follows rules and regulations. It almost it also means that information is freely available and directly accessible to those who will be affected by such decisions and their enforcement. It also means that enough information is provided and that it is provided in easily understandable forms and media. Responsiveness is another characteristic of good governance which requires that institutions and processes try to serve all stakeholders within a reasonable time frame. Consensus oriented. There are several actors and as many viewpoints in a given society. Good governance requires mediation of the different interests in society to reach a broad consensus in society on what is in the best interest of the whole community and how this can be achieved. It also requires a broad and long-term perspective on what is needed for sustainable human development and how to achieve the goals of such development. This can only result from an understanding of the historical, cultural, and social contexts of a given society or community. Equity and inclusiveness, this is another characteristic of good governance. A society's well-being depends on ensuring that all its members feel that they have a stake in it and do not feel excluded from the mainstream of the society. This requires all groups, but particularly the most vulnerable, have opportunities to improve or maintain their well-being. Effectiveness and efficiency. Good governance means that process and institutions produce results that meet the needs of the society while making the best use of resources at their disposal. The concept of efficiency in the context of good governance also covers the sustainable use of natural resources and the protection of the environment. Accountability. It's a key requirement of the good governance. Not only the governmental institutions but also the private sector and civil society organizations must be accountable to the public and to their institutional stakeholders. Public officials must be answerable for government behavior and responsive to the entity from which their authority is derived. Accountability. Good governance uh, in the local government institution is about how local government bodies ensure that they are doing the right things in the right way for the right people in a timely and inclusive, open, honest, and accountable manner. In broader terms, governance is about the institutional environment in which citizens interact among themselves and with government officials and agencies. Good governance requires promoting accountability in governments, build the capacity to undertake economic reforms, implement them successfully, and provide citizens with an acceptable level of public services. Governance is the manner in which power is exercised in the management of a country's economic and social resources for development. The capacity of this institutional environment is important for development because it helps determine the impact achieved by the economic policies that are adopted by the government. It has been observed that while many governments have undertaken broadly similar reform packages, the outcomes have varied significantly across countries and cultures. There are several factors underlying these differences, but clearly one is the quality of governance in the countries concerned. It has been observed that while many governments have undertaken broadly similar reform packages, the outcomes have been varied significantly across various countries. There are several there are several factors underlying these differences, but clearly one is the quality of governance in these countries. In other words, governance is the ability of governments to implement effectively the policies they have chosen. Hence, getting policies right may not by itself be sufficient for successful development if standards of governance are poor. So it is very important that the standards of the governance must be good. It is for this reason that improving governance or sound development management is a vital concern for all governments. Although policy aspects are important for development, the concept of good governance focuses essentially on the ingredients for effective management. In other words, irrespective of the precise set of social and economic policies that find favor with the government, good governance is required to ensure that those policies have their desired effects. In essence, it concerns norms of behavior that helps ensure that governments actually deliver to their citizens what they say they will deliver. A basic issue that arises in relation to governance is the proper role of government in social, political, and economic management. The growing consensus among development practitioners in this regard is that with the limited access of governments to information, markets generally allocate resources more efficiently. However, even in such economies, governments are expected to perform certain key functions, and these include maintaining macro stability, developing infrastructure, providing public goods, that is pure public goods and public goods, and sometimes maybe merit goods, and the prevention of market failures, and also promoting equity. The experience so far, especially within the South Asian countries, does not establish any direct correlation between the political environment on the one hand and rapid economic growth and social development on the other. Successful development has taken place in countries with different political systems. However, the common features that stand out in respect of high-performing economies are stability in broad policy directions, flexibility in responding to market signals, and discipline in sticking with measures necessary for meeting long-term objectives despite short-term difficulties, all hallmarks of good governance. Good governance is required to make sure that implementation is effective and consistent. Building governance capacity. Efforts to build and strengthen governance capacity would cover public sector management, public enterprise management and reform public financial management and civil service reform. Public sector management means ability of public sector agencies to manage their affairs. Public enterprise management and reform. At a fundamental level, public enterprise reform should begin with consensus building in respect of an appropriate role of the state in a market-friendly economy. So far as public financial management concerned, it is concerned with improvements in accounting and auditing procedures that are all the first line of reforms in the public finance system. Civil service reform is perhaps the most elusive transformation facing a government engaging in reforms to strengthen market-friendly processes of development. One major aspect of this problem, namely public sector wage bills that are unsustainably high, is a direct function of the size of the state system and will benefit from any downsizing that takes place. Participatory development processes. Participation is necessary for governments to make informed choices in respect of people's needs while allowing social groups to protect their rights. Participation can be expanded in several ways, such as through participation in projects, the public sector private sector interface, decentralization of economic functions, that is, empowerment of local government, and cooperation within non governmental organizations. The representation and participation of citizens heightens effectiveness and accountability in development activities. This is particularly true in the case of rural or community development projects and those in the social sector at the grassroots level. Public sector private sector interface is the manner in which the public and private sectors function together in an economy, which is one test of the effectiveness of the participation principle. Decentralization of public and service delivery functions. Similarly, it is likely that the devolution of authority to smaller administrative units, for example, provinces, districts, and local councils or municipalities, will foster greater responsiveness to local situations and possibilities than may be displayed by decision makers in a distant capital. Cooperation with NGOs. NGOs offer the possibility of engaging civil society in project formulation and implementation. Small, nimble, and with good local knowledge, NGOs can be effective and efficient vehicles for mobilizing and reaching project beneficiaries. On the negative side, there has been a proliferation of NGOs in recent times, and some have political agenda. While their lack of formal structures facilitates fast response items, it also implies some lack of accountability. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks a lot for watching this video. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, kindly subscribe to the channel and click on the bell icon so that you can get notifications about my other videos that I'll upload for you. Thanks for watching. See you in another video.